Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Sports Doyen with me, Prathamesh. We are back with our series Off the Pitch, and I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Mr. Daniel Geey from the United Kingdom. Daniel is one of the best sports lawyers going around in the globe who works with contracts, transfers, and other disputes in the footballing world. His work with FIFA has been immensely well known to all of us, and also his very well written book that is Done Deal. I would like to welcome Daniel on behalf of the Sports Doyen. Daniel, how are you, and how was transfer deadline day for you?
Thanks, Prathamesh. It was actually, I think we mentioned when I was in Mumbai a while back is that usually deadline day isn't too hectic for me. Most of the things have hopefully already happened. There was a few things to do, but nothing too ridiculously pressurized. So yeah, a lot of the stuff I thank goodness done over the last few months or particular weeks, and I could go to bed relatively early last night for a change, which is good.
You're kind of lucky in that sense that you could get go to bed early. We had to wait until morning to wait for the signings of Cavani here in India. So that was pretty stressful for us. But yeah, deadline day usually is a stressful day for fans as well as people like you are working behind the scenes. And your role is so pivotal in these signings as well. And talking about football, it is the heart and soul from where you are. You're from Liverpool. Now it is a huge part of your life. And how did you chart that passion about football in your life into being a sports lawyer and dealing with football? How was that journey when you kicked off?
A long one is the truth. A lot of the time, as we all grow up as and have particular passions. My passion has always been, talking anyone that would listen to me much more about football, really, and that's always been the case. It came sort of a bit of a natural transition, which is when I got to university and I was doing an undergraduate law degree, that if I could combine some football and sports subject matter with either my dissertations or with particular areas of law or the cases, it stuck that little bit more easily. I was more interested in reading about them, and it was everything like that sort of made it that much more, not straightforward, but more illuminating. So I did my third year dissertation on the Bosman ruling and the changes to the FIFA transfer system back in 2000 and 2001. I then did a master's in football broadcasting rights and EU competition law. So I spent a year, writing 80 or 90,000 words on a variety of different cases, including the proposed and rejected B Sky B takeover of Manchester United, for example, and then the Premier League case, and then a number of other listed events cases. So and then by the time then I started my job at an American law firm called Jones Day, my idea, even though it wasn't going to be a short-term idea, was just to let as many people as possible know that I knew a bit about the football industry or understood how the football industry worked to a degree. And so that when any particular work came in across the firm, and you could always tell what work came in because there always had to be conflict checks. So there had to be a check saying, can we act for this client against this client in relation to this matter? And then whenever there was anything sports or football related, I would simply just email the partner who'd sent that conflict check and just said, can I help, really? And that was the same way into my next job after 2 years at Jones Day. Moved to a great firm called Field Fisher. And anytime, and we did more sports work there. And I was lucky enough to do 4 or 5 Premier League, Scottish, and Championship takeover deals. And so, I got friendly with the 2 or 3 partners that did work in the entertainment and sport and football corporate space. And whenever there was things that cropped up, they weren't my client relationships, but I started to, have a decent knowledge of those particular areas. If it was third-party ownership, if it was disputes, if it was particular litigation, if it was, particular transfers, if it was the regulatory frameworks, I could offer some value add to the clients we were working with. And, I got wheeled out sometimes as the football guy, the guy that sort of understood the market, knew what was going on in the market and could and help. So, that was the slowly slow burner approach to getting into the industry. But at that stage, even, it's easy to say most of my legal work was not sport and wasn't football. I was doing work across tons of sectors like aviation and automotives and financial services and agriculture and mobile and TV. It was pretty broad, but in a way that gave me a very good foundation to understand the wider markets, and then obviously to specialize a little bit more in the sports and football space.
Yeah, I think for most of us, even in the sports field now, who are there with us, for us also it is an avid in a very different way. I myself come from hospitality, but I had this passion for football for a long time, wanted to enter into broadcasting, so we're trying this channel now. So I think it is not that easy to come directly into sport, but as your passion for sport, I think you find a way to connect yourself with the sport that you love. And it's been a huge credit to you that you were able to do that. And that takes a lot of heart, that takes a lot of dedication, which you talked about, actually calling the partners and asking them, okay, is there help? And because you just wanted to know more about it, you wanted to get into it. So I think that can be action that everybody who are watching this video can actually take back. And whoever is wanting to indulge into this space can actually look forward to. I think coming to transfers, obviously come out of the transfer window as we are recording right now. And just for our viewers, Daniel, could you help our viewers to try to understand what could be the essentials of a football contract that is between a club and a player, that is between a player and the other agencies? Come across any out of the box contract clauses? Like there was a report that Dennis Burkham had a weird clause for traveling outside the country, etc. So there was this clause of the flight. So there have been such clauses, and have you come across any personally while you have been drafting a few of them?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. So, the it's always funny. The boring part, or I say the boring, the part that people are less interested in is, me saying I'm a commercial contracts lawyer, I'm an intellectual property lawyer, I'm a dispute lawyer, I'm, a regulations lawyer. But they are all of the things that make up being, a sports and football lawyer to a degree. And when we're dealing with contracts between players and clubs, ultimately the types of contract that I'll be advising on in terms of a transfer or a contract renegotiation are the employment contract and those type of clauses that we'll come back to in a second. Usually then, if it's for an elite club, it could be an image rights agreement too, between the players' image rights company and the club. And the third contract, usually among others, would be the representation contract, usually between the club, the player, and the agent, as to how much and how the agent will be paid for the work that he or she has done to bring that player to that club. And in terms of clauses, you mentioned at the beginning, in my book Done Deal, I do mention quite a few. Dennis Burkham, springs to mind because he had a real fear of flying. So a lot of the time he would, for particularly important games for Arsenal especially, he would have a driver take him across Europe, which would obviously be pretty time consuming, but that was something that he had an issue with. There were lots of others. So, for example, Stefan Schwartz, the Swedish international football player, when he was playing for Sunderland or signing for Sunderland, an eagle-eyed secretary at the club secretary, saw that one day he was very keen on going into space. So they put a non-space clause into his employment contract, by all accounts, in the same way that the ex-Liverpool left-back, Norwegian left-back Stig Inge Bjorneby, his father apparently was a very good Olympic skier, and he liked skiing himself. So Liverpool had to put a specific clause stopping him from, skiing in the off season. There's some more nuanced ones, like very briefly, there was a player called Neil Ruddock, who's an ex-Liverpool player as well, ex-Spurs, And when I think he was moving to Crystal Palace, he was definitely one of the the larger players in the squad. There was reported that there was actually he had a weight clause in his employment contract, which was if he weighed over a certain amount, that would potentially lead to a wage reduction as a result. So the irony was that it was reported in one of the games, I don't know whether it's true or not, that his debut was effectively postponed because the club didn't have shorts that were big enough for him. Now it must be just an urban myth, but either way, it was what was reported. So it was an interesting story. But Neil Ruddock had some great games for Liverpool. He scored a big header. I remember when Liverpool came back from a 3-0 game at Anfield to score the equaliser. So I still have a large affinity with Neil Ruddock.
Yeah, I think you mentioned some real interesting clauses there, and I think I was personally a bit hesitant to say this because there are a very few number of people who can actually go into space. So for someone who has that opportunity to be not given that, it might have been a little tricky to negotiate that contract in itself. But it's credit to the clubs as well who are able to put such eye to detail, and to people like you are able to bring that into contracts, and able to negotiate with the players and try to understand there as well as the club side regarding the deal. So coming to Mumbai, because you mentioned Mumbai at the start, and you were part of one of your sessions at the Football Business Academy in Mumbai. I fondly remember that day because I think it was you and Dr. Ekut. Uh, I I cannot remember myself sitting there and listening. I mean, I've never been such I've never been such excited to listen to someone before. I mean, yeah, obviously when you hear the likes of Peter Drury, Jim Baglin, etc., that is for the 90 minutes. But to listen to someone for an entire day, and yet feel okay, I heard enough. That was the feeling which I got. It was such a fantastic day for me personally, and I think everyone involved there, you and Dr. I could really gave a lot of knowledge to lot of knowledge to us in that session. And I think you have been doing a lot of such initiatives with Dr. Ekut. You've been doing such initiatives personally as well. So is this one of your key motivators going forward in your career, that you want to educate more people who are in this football space about what football is actually on the ground level, and how do you contribute to the sport that you love?
Well, it's a great one, Prathamesh. I actually think it's even wider than that, and we had that discussion. I remember we had lots of great discussions over that long weekend as well, which was um, the first thing is, and I get it from Dr. Urquhart as well, is his number one passion, and the same with me to a degree, is just to educate and to give insights that others don't give or want to share. I don't. My overriding energy and enthusiasm for when I'm not in the office doing drafting and everything else is I love going to speak to people about the things that I do, about how I can help, about how I can, motivate people, about how I can, get people closer to the thing that they want to do. If it's football, if it's sport, if it's music, if it's gardening, it doesn't, whatever it is. And the thing that I got from that weekend, which I loved, was that we probably talked either day for over 10 hours, I think, probably in different ways, and it felt like it just flew by because the interaction and the energy in the room was so fantastic. So to your question, the truth is that I love the act of helping and speaking and sharing knowledge. And it just so happens that over the last what is now 16 years or so, I've been lucky enough to impart work in a great industry where people are interested in knowing more about. But the truth also is that same enthusiasm or motivation also applies for people across different sectors. It's like, if you know what your passion points are and you're willing to invest in it, and you're willing to show the enthusiasm, and you're willing to, like what you're doing with this podcast, demonstrate skill, expertise, resilience, proactivity, motivation, all of those sort of fundamental foundations that make, that set you apart. Just making a difference to one person by giving them one little piece of advice, or doing one thing which, energizes that person to show that it can be done, that you provide hope, it's almost like when someone says, what's the magic formula? And you say, there isn't really a magic formula. It's just like, consistent, persistent, hard work that you enjoy doing over quite a long period of time. That type of message is a very, I think, comforting message. If you keep doing the right things, usually you'll get the right results.
There are a couple of things, Daniel, that I very fondly took from those 2 days apart from football. One thing is that I remember that you said, whenever you meet, always talk to them about how your previous meeting was. What did you do, or share your experience after that. And one thing which I remember you you said that is the Mumbai metro is much more spacious and luxurious than than the London one. So that is something I I remember very. That was that we even sang a song in the metro. I think from between stations. So I think that is something which I really fondly remember. Apart from the two brilliant knowledge exchange days that we had, another thing was actually when we went to the bar and we watched Man City thrash Watford 8-0, and we were almost betting now City is going to score, and they scored eight goals. That was a great memory that I have with you, and I think pretty sure that the next time we meet won't be virtual, and let's hope that we can have another conversation like this again. I think that is something which I really wanted to share about you. That is something which I really took from you personally, and looking forward to building on that as well. uh, and apart from football, Daniel, you've also been a part of EuroLeague basketball, and that is something that is entirely different as a sport in Europe. And what are the kind of environmental changes that you see within basketball as compared to football?
Yeah, well, I can just briefly tell you about what I do, but there's more overlap than you think, is the truth. Ultimately, as I talked about previously, it doesn't sound as cool when you say you're a regulations lawyer, and I am, and continue to be a regulations lawyer, is the truth. Like, one of the main things that I assist on with EuroLeague is I'm on an independent. My title, quite bizarrely, is I'm president of the EuroLeague committee, which looks into, effectively has remit to look into the EuroLeague clubs equivalent of the UEFA financial fair play regulations, to ensure that they are going to be the clubs are going to be sustainable, that they're in it for the long term, that they're not living beyond their means, that that they've got a sustainable model generally. And so my role originally it stemmed from my experience in advising clients on UEFA's FFP regulations and the Premier League equivalent and the Football League equivalent, and how I could bring to bear that skill set into EuroLeague basketball. Now, just like every other sport at the moment, it's been suffering, when you can't finish a season, where you've got to curtail seasons, when you can't have fans in stadia, when the season has restarted. All of those type of things shake up the regulatory, commercial, contractual landscape, and EuroLeague isn't immune from those difficulties. But I think the thing that I would say there is, the thing that I really enjoy, is that it's been a really interesting learning curve, learning more about the basketball industry, European wide and also globally. I have the privilege of being able to go to the EuroLeague Final Four matches at the end of each season, which has just been an incredible experience, and it brings it home even more so, why fans are right at the epicenter of sports globally. I don't know if I sort of necessarily took it for granted, but the pandemic has definitely brought it back home, of not being able to go to stadium, not being able to enjoy the entertainment sector, not being able to go to particular matches, or be in groups and share that sort of communal and community spirit of, just being supporters of a particular team. So yeah, in the broader sense, in the broader sort of COVID environment we find ourselves now in, having insight into a different sport rather than just football and other sports that I've been involved in previously has been, a very interesting, illuminating experience.
Yeah, I think as you said, one thing that really struck me was fans and how they are the epicenter of sport. And you yourself, being a Liverpool fan, there was a huge title that you guys won in the Premier League last season. It was a long wait for every Liverpool fan across the globe, and it was a really exciting team. It was a really exciting year for Liverpool. But unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it wasn't something that you could watch in the stadium. You could only go there, celebrate the title with the players. So, how was the title celebration in the city of Liverpool considering all the COVID-19 restrictions, and how did you personally celebrate it?
Well, me personally, I was actually at a friend's house outside whilst the Manchester City Chelsea game was going on, because we thought that obviously City would beat Chelsea, and then um, when I'm trying to think who handballed, was it? I can't even remember who handballed the ball about 10 minutes to go, which then gave the penalty to Chelsea, which then set them on their way to victory. I then went inside, and then it was Fernandinho, I think, that got sent off. I think, wasn't it? Then that sort of brought it home to real that Liverpool were going to win the league, because up until that point, you don't count your chickens. Basically, you just got to you just hope that it will happen. So the real shame of it was that Anfield wasn't there in all its glory. And I've been going to Anfield since I was 7 years old, is the truth. And whilst we won the league when I was 8 for the last time, that's 30 years now in the making. So it no doubt it was a terrible shame that we couldn't celebrate that together in a full stadium that would have been going off on one, really. But at the same time, that the Liverpool team, granted, we're speaking after they got walloped 7-2 by Aston Villa, but generally that Liverpool team over the last couple of seasons has been an absolute machine. And bar that period under Brendan Rodgers, where you had Suarez, Sterling, Coutinho, Sturridge doing their job, which was fantastic going forward. The Liverpool team we've got at the moment, it's just like, all fans and supporters go through cycles, and Liverpool fans need to feel very privileged and savour the team that they've got at the moment, because they won't always have that forward line and Van Dijk and Alisson doing the job. So I can't wait to get back into a stadium to watch football and enjoy sharing the moment with other people. I think that's the
Yeah, Daniel, I'm pretty sure had the fans actually been there at Anfield, you would have heard "You will never walk alone," not just in the city of Liverpool. That chant went up to Manchester. It would have been a fantastic moment for all Liverpool fans to actually be there. But pretty sure that Jurgen Klopp has promised a party once the situation is back to normal, or the new normal, you might rather say. So that party will definitely happen for Liverpool fans, and it was a delight to watch them last season, definitely. And another thing that COVID-19 unfortunately brought in was a lot of financial issues for the clubs. There have been that there was this Manchester City deal that got overruled uh, uh, in the pandemic period. When there was a little dispute over whether the fine which they were supposed to pay, that the 2 seasons which they were going to miss for the Champions League. Then there was a situation that multiple clubs lost a lot of money. You could see a lot of football clubs in the lower leagues especially suffer a lot due to this. There were a lot of transfer complications as well. I think you saw the deal which was Real Madrid go through, Jadon Sancho to Man United. There was a lot of transfer complication in that. So the pandemic unfortunately did bring all these kind of financial issues. So how did actually clubs deal with these issues, and the Man City FFP thing? How much that must have boosted City.
A lot's happened. A lot's happened in the last few months, to put it mildly. It feels like I could write a book on a month by month basis. Is the truth that I would just firstly recommend anybody to read the Manchester City Judgement. It's over 100 pages long. It's a very, very detailed read, and ultimately the CAS came to the conclusion that there wasn't enough evidence on the basis of the UEFA charge. It's relatively straightforward. That the high evidential threshold wasn't met based on the leaked emails. So granted, they were still fined a significant amount of money for non-cooperation with UEFA, but ultimately, there wasn't enough evidence to be able to prove that there was, all of the monies that were alleged to have been either invested or indirectly provided through sponsors. Ultimately it couldn't be proven. So you had a buoyant situation where Manchester City are allowed to play in the next season's worth of Champions League, but then go out of the Champions League just when it looks like the drawer opens up for them to potentially do well. And then you have the transfer window opening up much later than traditionally would have been the case. Particular transfers going through earlier, but then not being able to potentially be able to registered, like Ziyech to Chelsea, for example, from Ajax, because the season hadn't quite finished. So, and then you had difficult situations of players being out of contract whilst the season's still remaining. Players like Ryan Fraser not playing for teams like Bournemouth that needed probably their best players to play, and then being relegated. And then situations where the transfer window now is continuing on into when the season had started, and that is something that the Premier League over a number of years have been keen to try and avoid, is the truth, which is once the season starts, the window effectively shuts. So there's still, until the 16th of October, the domestic window in the UK, in England and Wales, is still effectively open. So, and that's just the start of it, really. You talk about the project restart, the effect that no games for a while had on broadcasting money rebates that were due to foreign broadcasters, to the rebate that would be due to Sky and BT that will be paid back in a few years' time, to the significant financial fallout that will impact the EFL if some type of funding or loan isn't provided to them because there are no fans in stadia at the moment. So, these type of issues just keep on going. But at the same time, you have, significant Premier League spending. I'm doing an interview a bit later this afternoon. I was doing just some research on it this morning, and I was looking at the net spend, or rather the amount spent by Premier League clubs over the last few seasons. And if I just give a quick quote, which was in 2018 for the summer window, the amount spent was 1.3 billion. In 2019, it was 1.4 billion. And in 2020, it's only regressed to 1.2 billion. So still significant amounts are being spent by Premier League clubs, even at a time of, global pandemic. And that's not even, with particular transfers like Sancho or otherwise coming off, which would obviously added significant more amounts of money to that overall bottom line.
Yeah, and we were talking about, as I said, Jadon Sancho deal that didn't actually go through. There was another deal that last season didn't go through, was Paulo Dybala to Juventus. So from Juventus to Tottenham Hotspur, and there were a lot of transfer complications, and there do seem to be a lot of transfer complications when these big money deals happen. A lot of image rights, a lot of clauses that within the club do not actually allow players to move on. With the big money, there is always this issue of structured payments, add-ons, bonuses, etc. So how do you deal with all these when they come, and what are the complications in actually getting these big deals over the line?
Oh, Prathamesh, where to start? Yeah, the short answer is, ultimately, as looks like was the case in with the Sancho deal, Dortmund put their asking price there that they weren't willing to budge on. Now, a lot of the time, like as any transfer, and just like in any economics 101, in order for a transaction to happen, you need a willing buyer and a willing seller. Um, and in a market which has pretty inelastic demand, i.e., you can only buy one particular product, if that is, a market of one for Sancho, then the ability to be able to negotiate from buy side at least is potentially reduced because the seller has a very strong bargaining leverage negotiation position. Even if buyer and seller are happy, there might still be those complications as you talked about. How much gets paid up front? How much in installments? How much is guaranteed? How much is contingent? Then there might be player club issues to do with, as you mentioned, image rights matters, existing commercial deals which conflict with current buying club commercial partners. How much agent's commission is going to be paid, how much is going to be paid in which installments. So, as I sort of set out in Done Deal and we talked about at length a while back, it looks at face value when you look at the newspaper reports or the internet articles that a transaction and a transfer is pretty easy to potentially do, and it couldn't be further from the truth. You're probably having 3 or 4 negotiations. You're negotiating with your own client, you're negotiating with the selling club, you're negotiating with the buying club, you're negotiating with possibly the player's image rights company as well. So there's multiple negotiations to try and get everybody happy, and it's the role of the agent to be able to do that, and it's a difficult place sometimes to come from.
Yeah, and as you said, and as it is written in your book, Done Deal, actually getting this big money transfers over the line for us fans might just seem, you just pay a certain amount of money and get the deal done. What is the problem? But there are so many complications, and when you talk about it was I ordered this before I wanted to get it signed by you when I ordered this, but unfortunately it did come on time. But I read this book, and I fondly read this book every now and then when I have certain things that actually I want to refer again. And it is such a fantastic insight into all Premier League transfers, into certain transfer complications that fans probably do not understand. And it is very enlightening for all the fans who would rather not understand the side of the player, the side of the club, and just try and put a perspective into it. And any conversation with you talking about Dundee would have been it would have been so difficult not to mention Dundee. You also have Dundee podcast. Even that is doing really well. I think you have got some brilliant insights. We have been listening to your podcast as well. So are you looking at writing such more exciting stuff for us fans in the future, and even more podcasts in the future?
Yeah, I've got a few ideas up my sleeve. So yeah, I think in time I'll probably try and write an updated Done Deal. Maybe in a couple of years' time, there'll be so much content to be able to add, and obviously just to update things because there are always new examples, new controversies, new issues, new complications, etc. across the board. So yeah, that's one thing. And then we talked about just previously. I did previously during the beginning of lockdown as sort of career YouTube course as well as a football industry YouTube course I did. And one of my ideas is to try and write a short book to try and help people understand the best way to maximize their own abilities to be able to get into the job or career or industry that they really want to do. And we had all of these talks with you and your colleagues during the course around how to invest in yourself, how to build your knowledge base, how to network better, how to improve your chances of developing the right tactics, the right customs, the right ideas, the proactivity that you need to have, etc. So my hope is over maybe the next 2 or 3 months, especially maybe over sort of the festive period. I've probably written about half of the book already. My idea is to try and finish the book get some interviews with people in the industry as well, the wider entertainment industry, and then think about publishing it, just to give another perspective on, like we talked about just previously in the beginning of the podcast, beginning of this podcast, which was, you know, there's nothing stopping you from doing what you want to do. It's just, it will take quite a lot of hard work and dedication. But if you can put that time in and build that resilience and, you know, hope that you can do better and strive to do better, that it's much more in your grasp than you would otherwise think.
Yeah, I think that is something that all of us will definitely be inspired by. And one thing which Daniel absolutely loved about Dundee was not just the content that is inside, but the simplicity of the content, the way you have explained it, and the way it is so easy to read and it is easy to understand. It is something that, that I absolutely loved. And we're just recording right after the international transfer windows done, and you have been having a quite a stressful transfer window, I assume. So it was really generous of you to take out time for us for this interview, and it was definitely wonderful having you here because there are so many insights that we could have rather not picked on had we not had this chat with you, had the viewers not able to understand how deals actually work in football, what are the minor intricacies that actually matter in this footballing space. So thank you so much, Daniel. It was an absolute pleasure having you, and looking forward to that next time when I'm actually going to get this Dundee book, and probably the updated Dundee book autographed by you. And hopefully we can definitely look forward to the London Metro rather than me coming to you coming to Mumbai. So thank you so much, and thank you to all our viewers who are tuned into the Sports Doyen. Keep liking and sharing our videos. Thank you.